we talked to the guys before the game, and we just asked two things of them. We asked for teamwork and intensity. And the way we framed it is two things that are totally in their control, right? It doesn't matter about the opponent, doesn't matter about the field or the fans or anything. Those are two things that they can control. And that's the type of effort that we saw today. The boys certainly delivered on that. We want to be able to beat teams like this, but we do think it's a positive step. Our record against Brazil hasn't been great. And, to have the guys put all the results away and just focus on working together, playing hard, and doing their role was refreshing, because that's what we're going to need to be successful moving forward.
It was not a very simple game tonight. We had a lot of questions being asked about us internally and externally, and I think we relied on the bond that we have with each other to demand more from each other on the training pitch during the week, demand more on the pitch during the game, and I think it's very important for us to have performances like that if we want a chance at competing for a trophy. We're a good team. We showed that tonight. We showed that we can play. Obviously, we have our faults, but at the end of the day, when it comes down to it, we need to be able to make big plays in big moments. So it's not just about that, but having that intensity and that desire and what it means to wear this crest on our chest is really, really important. And we have to feel that passion and energy every time we step out on the pitch, because whenever we play any team, they want to make a statement against the U.S. men's national team.
Casey Keller joins us, who was at the game last night. Casey, that was a lot better. Why?
Well, I think it was a couple things. I think one of it is it was a little less cavalier. It was basically let's defend properly. Let's get numbers back, stay compact, have some respect for the opponent, and realize we can't just play a team like Colombia or a team like Brazil, just heads up. Just, hey, you attack, we attack, let's go see what happens, and we're going to beat you. So there was a lot more thought. There was a lot more intelligence behind the way they started. And you can see then, once they're compact defensively, once they keep themselves in good shape, they've got players that can make differences. I mean, on a different day, the U.S. could have won that game, and not only won the game, 1-2 goals. Look, Brazil created chances. Brazil's always going to create chances. Look at the front three that they have and the subs that can come on. So one thing I really liked, and Matt had a good bounce-back game. Obviously, the team had a great bounce-back game from that, really difficult match against Colombia. But in some of the way that they defended, they got numbers back. They forced a lot of the efforts that Brazil created, they forced them wide. They gave Matt a good angle to make the save. It wasn't just come on through. Now, the tough part for any goalkeeper is, yes, you have a great game. You make 10 saves, but there's that one little blip that's always going to have that asterisk, and that's that clearance out of the back. And so, if the U.S. can clean up some of those individual mistakes that we saw in the Colombia game and a few last night, and then they keep that intensity, they keep that organization, they keep that kind of team spirit that we saw tonight. Now, what we saw, earlier in this campaign, we saw a really horrible performance against Jamaica in a semifinal, and then a brilliant performance against Mexico in the final. But it's like, how can they put it all together? So it's not like you have to respond after you have a bad performance. Can you put a string of performances together, which they're going to have to do if they're going to be successful in Copa America?
It's so much better than what we saw against.
Oh yeah, the Pulisic goal was huge because it settled them down at a period where they'd got ragged. They really got ragged, and they lost the goal. The straight ball clipped out. They got punished. Musa got caught just before that. They could have been punished again. There was a great dummy by Vinicius Jr. on the far side, and just solved the whole stadium. And Matt Turner made a good save. But that once the Pulisic goal went in, they got their shape again, to be fair. And they said, okay, as Casey said, they got back in and said, all right, make sure we're tight, make sure we're not leaving any gaps, and then we can pick and prod at Brazil. And they did, and actually as the second half wore on, I thought the US were the more threatening. And we saw some of the saves in the clip, but there was others, and they were the more threatening. They had a bit of pace about the game. and it was much better. Now Brazil had their chances early on. It was one of those games. If it had been 3 or 4 at half time for Brazil, you'd have went, okay, they've taken their chances, but they didn't, and the US did not buckle, came back much better.
What caught your eye, or who caught your eye in the second half, Tom?
I got in for the second half last night, so I watched the game, and I thought Tim Ream done really well in terms of the way he led from the back, the way he didn't panic. There was so many times where he was put under pressure. Brazil trying to close them down. He was calm. He played balls into midfield. He, I think, led by example. But the way, for someone that doesn't get a chance to watch a lot of the USA national side, I watched the individuals. I watched the team shape. I think they were set up well. I think Craig's right. I missed the first half, so second half. Anyone could have won it. Brazil could have won it, but the Americans could have won it last night, the way they played. And I think the confidence levels from what I'm seeing in this American team is starting to come back. Well, I don't watch them every single week, so I'm not sure if they're fragile and why they can't put a string some positive results together. But watching them last night, I thought they looked a unit. I thought Matt Turner spoke well in terms of what he wants to see, what's in front of him. And the players played well. They stuck to the game plan.
Looking at Jay Reyna, though, it does look to me as a player who, obviously, next season or after this Copa, he's got the Copa America, which is huge. But for the continuation of his career for club and country, he's going to have to find a way to
start playing, isn't he?
To get regular playing time, because I think he wasn't bad last night at times, but he was a little bit anonymous, particularly in the first hour or so, and I think that's down to a lack of game time really for him. I mean, I've said this a lot. To go from hardly any game time for your club into the international arena, albeit it's a friendly, but the games coming up are not friendlies, that's a difficult task. And I think for him, obviously, the more games he gets in the next month is going to be great, and he's going to get fitter and he's going to get sharper. But for the longevity of his career, to get the best out of him, he's going to have to find...
I had that once before, Craig, where I was coming back from an ACL and getting picked for the Scotland side. And I felt a little bit of a fraud. I was turning up, getting picked when there was guys that were playing constantly for their team, and I wasn't fit. I was coming back from an ACL injury. I kept getting picked in the squad. Bertie Vogts kept picking me, so he put faith in me.
Because you were the poster boy.
Yeah, exactly.
No, but I weren't, because
you were the snipe.
I weren't playing for West Ham,
but that's not your problem.
No.
That's the manager's fault.
But going on Gio Reyna, the problem is for the player, when you're not playing for your club, to try and then produce that for your country, it's difficult because you've got no rhythm. You're completely out of form. He needs to find a club. I thought he found it last year in Forest, but he didn't play. So he needs to find somewhere. Even if he's got to step down a level, you've got to be playing. You've got to be the top man at your club at whatever level. So he's got to find a space.
There's a few players within that US squad you can have that conversation about. Obviously, Matt Turner as well. Casey, overall, obviously, a week Sunday, the opening game of the Copa for the US. They take on Bolivia. Do you think he's going to start his family starting 11 now? Because he made some changes, of course, from the side that lost against Colombia. Do you think this is it?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure that was the starting lineup that we saw the other night. I think there still might be a change or two. But yeah, there's a lot of valid points there between, stringing wins together, guys not getting regular playing time, maybe playing in this tournament with a chip on their shoulder, trying to maybe impress some other teams if they think that's going to get them more playing time. But I think what we saw from at least the collective and then the subs that came on is we saw the attitude that needs to come from the first minute every match. And again, why that's not happening, that's going to be something obviously that the coaching staff and the players are going to be talking to each other about. But yeah, it is. I think it's a great opportunity. And then when you've played against an incredibly informed Colombia side and then a Brazil side that's still trying to find its way with a bunch of young players who made, what did they make, 10 changes from the match the other day? So, yeah, they're still trying to figure out their lineup as well. But then the problem is there was no real expectation in these two matches. I mean, yeah, you don't want to take a hammering, and it's nice to get a draw against Brazil, but there's no real expectation. The problem is now you're going to that first game against a side that I think everyone expects the U.S. to beat, particularly at home to start this tournament. So that's where the pressure starts, and that's where we'll see, kind of where Gregg gets it right and where the players get it right.
When you think of Brazil, you think of one of the best teams in the world. They're not there at the moment, obviously struggling in CONMEBOL qualifying. There's this transition at the moment, and you take a look at their performance yesterday. It kind of epitomised that, especially in midfield. They seem to be lacking any sort of engine.
Yeah, I mean, Gomez from Wolves and Gomares, you know, talented players, particularly Gomares, but, you know, do I associate him with the Brazil midfield? I don't really, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, I think he's tidy at Newcastle, and then obviously Paquetà's been around for a while, but no, it's not something that's. Look, Rodrigo and Vinicius Junior scare the life out of you. Maybe Paquetá, you know, floating in behind and playing these balls and getting in the box, but the rest of it, not really, to be honest. But they are making, you know, it's a transition for them as well. But yeah, it's not a Brazilian team that fills you full of fear. Unless
1998, is it, Greg?
I think they've lost their romance.
Well, you know,
Wait, I've just seen him up now. We have.
have I
Now he's
mentioned?
going to start naming players.
No,
Go on.
Dunga, Rivaldo, Ronaldo, Roberto Carlos,
there we go.
Cafu.
So that's what I was saying about the romance. You look at the Brazil side now, it's more European. It's hard workers, it's legs apart from...
It's a good team, not a great team.
Exactly that. And
those players
where's the Neymars, where's the Ronaldinhos?
Yeah.
They haven't got that star player.
Yeah,
apart from Vinny
Vinicius
Jr.
Jr. is kind
So I've been slightly hypocritical then of my analysis of the US. Anybody can play against this Brazil team.
There you go, you see.
Rather
Yeah,
than,
yeah, exactly.
No. But I tell you what, though, you know, it was, you know, we talk about friendlies and no pressure. You know, when you get a walloping like they got against Colombia,
Yeah.
there was a bit of a pile-on, obviously. You'd expect that. And now you're playing Brazil, a Brazil team that's made a lot of changes, got some youngsters, got a new manager, but it's still got some talented players. So Gregg Berhalter, you know, could have gone better, could have won the game. But the night couldn't have went much better apart from that in terms of performance. And don't let him kid you. He was in his hotel room before that game on the prayer mat.
Oh, really?
Don't get another shellacking.
Sometimes these games are easier to play in than the ones that you're expected to win. You can play against Brazil, you can be free, because no one's really expecting you to win.
But you needed a response after one.
Yeah, I don't think they were expected to win against Colombia, but they were not expected to get hammered, which they did.
Casey, obviously throughout this tournament there's going to be talk about partisan crowds and whether or not the US are going to be well represented amongst the fan group. Do you think what we saw yesterday in Orlando will be reflective right across the tournament?
I think so. You know, and it's one of the difficult things that we've always dealt with is U.S. national team players is, you know, you can play 50 countries in New York and we could be the away team. You know, and then you know, you're talking about the big Latin American populations in America, but then also the groups that will travel because America is such an easy place to get to, such a great place to come on vacation and support your team. And so yeah, I mean, it's something that the guys are used to. I mean, the crowd yesterday, it was really difficult. It was maybe, you know, 60-40 to Brazil. But, you know, when the U.S. did something well, you heard a cheer. When Brazil did something well, you heard a cheer. So if you weren't paying attention, you had no idea who was cheering for who. So it's one of those situations that we've always dealt with as players. The players will deal with it. But you know, it's always kind of led to a little bit of a chip on the players' shoulders as well, that they want to prove something, and I think they did that because I think there was moments where I think the Brazilian crowd was impressed with what the American team did, and those are all positive steps forward. And you know, there's a reason why Copa America has elected to play these a couple tournaments here in America, because they know there'll be a broad representation for a majority of the teams.
But don't use that as an excuse.
I wasn't. I was just asking.
No, I'm not talking to you.
Oh, who are you talking to?
I'm saying it from a US player's perspective.
Right.
That's not. Yeah, I mean, it might be slightly problematic in their head, but don't. If they have a good Copa or a bad Copa, it won't be because of there's a partisan crowd or not.
Right.
Because they haven't played well or they've played well.
So that draw means that the US have only beaten Brazil. Is it once, Casey? Only once that US have beaten Brazil? Who was in goal that day? I forget.
Yep, one time. I don't know, some old bald guy.
Oh, there you go. Good old Brad Friedel.
Is this the
Thank you very much, Casey. Much appreciated.